Welcome back to our study of Pirkei Avot. Many of you are already in the third chapter, but I'd like to go back to the first chapter and deal with the words of Hillel. We're going to share two of the three Mishnayot of Hillel. Those are number 12 and number 14 in our study of Pirkei Avot. So the Mishnah begins and tells us that Hillel and Shammai accepted the tradition from their teachers, and Hillel says, be from the students of Aaron, Oev Shalom Verodev Shalom, love peace and pursue peace, Oev Esabrios Mekarvim LaTorah, loving people and bringing them closer to the Torah. So first let's begin with who is Aharon. Well, Aharon was a prophet who lived in the time of the Exodus of Egypt. Aaron lived till 123 years old. Aaron was a brother of Moshe, of Moses, and very significant in his leadership of the people. He is extensively spoken about in the Bible. He was important also in really setting the stage of the Exodus of Egypt. He was the right-hand man of Moshe. He later became the Kohen. His family were the priests, the Kohanim. He was the Kohen Gadol. And Hillel is telling us that we should be students of Aaron. And let's understand what that means. So the Mishnah says, have it mitalmidav shel Aaron, be students of Aharon. So why not be like Aaron himself? Why doesn't it say be like Aaron? What does it mean be like the students of Aharon? So two thoughts about what we're talking about and what it means to be a student of. Students our purpose is to observe, is to humble themselves before their teacher. So I should at least be a student of Aharon. It would be hard to be like Aharon in his greatness and what he accomplished. But again, it is important to be a student of Aharon, to humble oneself before one's teacher and learn from Aharon, Aaron being one of our teachers. Another thought is that when someone sees such a person, he is to learn to observe and learn him, not just mimic. A student's obligation is to understand his mentor, his Rebbe, his teacher, not to just do as he or she is doing, or to act that way. It's an obligation to learn from and understand what they're doing, and develop one's own self as well. So the mentor's purpose is not just to mimic and copy. It's to really understand what one's teacher is doing, and hopefully by doing so, they can take those aspects and be a student of that person, as well as develop themselves to be a teacher for others. It's very fascinating to think about Aharon and what it means to be either a student of Aaron, or another way of saying it is actually learning from Aaron, and that it was his relationship with his brother Moshe. Aaron was older than Moshe by 3 years, and our tradition tells us, based also, the Torah specifically states, that Aaron was happy for his brother, for his accomplishments, even though he was younger. And actually very fascinating, in the Torah itself, we find tension between older brothers and younger brothers, where the Torah actually gives more prestige in many situations to the younger brothers. So for example, in the situation of the Isaac and Ishmael, so Isaac being the younger brother, he's given more prestige, as well as with Yaakov and Esav, right? Esav being the older brother, it's been given to Jacob. So there always seems to be some form of tension that exists between brothers, especially when an older brother is expecting more, but understanding that throughout the Torah, that Aharon has tremendous respect for him, and each one understanding what their particular strengths are. So even so, we being students, seeing that someone else has more or someone else has a certain amount of prestige, you have areas where you have a strength, where you're strong, and being happy with what the other person actually has. And that relationship between Aaron and Moshe was a successful relationship that allowed the Jewish people to go into the land of Israel. So I want to speak a little bit about what he says, Ohev Shalom v'rodev Shalom. So I'll share a few thoughts on this matter. So it seems two different things. So you love peace and you pursue peace, rodev. It's actually a very strong word. It means you run after. It's like with all passion. So one could say, well, I love peace. Well, I love peace in my home. I love serenity. And a person perhaps loves peace for selfish reasons. Yeah, things are peaceful, things are good, I like it that way. But if a person is rodev shalom, person pursues peace, he makes the effort, or she makes the extra effort to go out and make a better world. Such a person is not just looking for his own comfort, but is going the extra mile to make sure that there is peace in the world, or really peace with others. Person sees difficulties that exist for others, pursuing that peace, trying to find serenity for them. Or for example, if people see that they are arguing and fighting with each other, it's a good opportunity. Again, you have to really know the whole situation, as we'll explain a little bit with Aaron himself, that trying to help them come to a place where they can be peaceful with each other. Now, the Rav Bar Tanura here, one of the commentaries, quotes an old tradition about what Aharon did. We're going to quote both of them today, but it's somewhat problematic, but let me just say what it is. It says that when Aaron saw two people arguing, he went to one of them without telling the other, and he would say, "See, your friend is upset. He asked me to come here, and he was really seeking for forgiveness." And then he would meet the other one, and then somehow they would embrace each other, and everything would be great. So there's a lot of problems with this story. Number one, Aaron is actually lying. It's not actually true. How is that going to work? So you're going to go to one, and then they're going to figure it out. I mean, number one, they're going to figure out that this really didn't actually happen. And number two, if you know Aaron and your friend tells you that actually it happens, how are you going to believe Aaron the next particular time? So there's a couple of thoughts to think about. It's a broader question about when should one lie? Is there times that lying is permissible? The truth is really a bedrock of Judaism, of the world existing, that of truth. And there's a question of when lying, if lying is not to one's advantage. There are situations, but again, what I'd like to suggest here is that if it's obvious that it will come out at some point in the short term, the fact is that perhaps under those circumstances, the lying is sort of not as detrimental. It could also be that really, in essence, Aaron is really looking at the internal person. The internal person actually wants to do good and wants to make peace. Talmud talks about this, that in one's soul, it's really, there are a lot of other factors that are sort of disturbing one's purpose to come to peace, and that Aaron is really telling him what in their soul they actually want. Maybe Aaron knew the individuals, knew the situation, and really wasn't openly lying. He was saying basically, yes, they really want to be truthful with each other. So that perhaps could explain the story, and the truth is that it's almost like they knew it was going to happen. Aaron spoke in a certain way, they had a tremendous amount of respect for him, and when he came and said that this person really wants to make peace, it could be something that was insightful with regards to Aaron. So a fascinating story, which really requires much more work on these issues of when is it appropriate Are there situations where a lie could be said? How long will that lie and how much damage can be done with that particular lie, etc. But here we see that Aaron's pursuing of peace and harmony would bring brothers together. One other point here about Ohev Shalom and Rodev Shalom is perhaps the idea that with regards to one's friend, it's very nice. You should be in a situation where there's Ohev Shalom, you have a good friend, and things seem to be well, and that's the way life works. But life isn't that simple. Strife does occur even in friendships. Sometimes it's a growth of the friendship. But the fact is that you should be a Rodev Shalom. So even in times, we're talking about a good friend. We're not talking about somebody who's got tremendous problems, and maybe that's another discussion for another time. But let's say you have a good friend, and you got into a squabble, or you got a squabble with your spouse, etc. It's important to be able to take the initiative. Maybe that person needs a little time of space, but to basically to regain the peace, sometimes it's important for a person to take that initiative and say, you know what, I'm going to Rodev Shalom. I'm going to be the first one to make the particular move. And not say, well, that person should make the move, that person should be the one. No, the fact is, if this relationship is extremely important to you, and you want to build that relationship, it is proper to Rodev Shalom, to pursue that situation. Something my Rebbe emphasized in situations of families and spouses, etc., to be able to create shalom bayis, to create peace in the home, to look to be the one to apologize first. To a certain extent, to create the common good, we sometimes have to be able to be humble in our situation and be able to say, you know what, I'm going to be the one who is Rodev peace. I'm going to be the one who's going to be pursuing peace, even though in essence that's the case. And just to add to that, it's also an opportunity when we think about Ohev Shalom, is to love and create within yourself a place of peace, a place of compassion on oneself, to find, if one is sort of anxious or whatever, to use the opportunity to find situations where you can Ohev Shalom within yourself. The end of this Mishnah deals with the following: loving people, Oheves Brios, and bringing them closer to Torah. So this is sort of more of a broader situation of concern for humanity. Oheves Brios, here he sort of explains it more in a situation of people. Brios could perhaps even refer to the animal kingdom, etc. But again, there seems to be a correlation here between loving a person and bringing them to Torah. And really, this is something also that I've learned, that you really want to create a situation where you have a friendship first before you can actually bring them closer to God. There are people that stand on a stump and want to sell God and all of that. It's really creating a relationship with that person and then bringing them close to the study of Torah or closer to a relationship with God. And the idea behind that is that really you're not going to be able to teach someone or be close to someone, and teachers know this well, as long as you need to first create a relationship, that you have concern from someone, and then they'll be open to hear you. If you're going to just speak without any sense of concern, you can't really bring them closer to God. And just to mention one of the story is that similar to this is a story again that is said in the name of Aaron. Again, the Rabbi Bartanura quotes from an older source that, for example, when Aaron knew that someone did something wrong, they had sinned or they had gotten to something which was inappropriate to them, he would come to them and he would show such love for them that when people saw this, they would say, well, if Aaron would really know that I did something incorrectly, that I did something improperly, he would not be close to me, and therefore that would be an incentive to do tshuva, repentance. And I think what's significant about that idea is that in a relationship with our friends, a relationship with our children, with our relationship with our grandchildren, if we show a sense of love, that we really care about them in situations where they do something wrong, and they'll come right back because they know of the relationship and the love you have for them, that can be an incentive to bring them in the right path. I'm going to go to Mishnah 14. Mishnah 13 actually speaks about, also Hillel shares some words, but I'd like to speak about a famous phrase that we might be familiar with. Huya Omer used to say, Im ein ani li mili uchshani la'atzmi ma'ani bim lo achshav emosai. He used to say, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? And if I am for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? This is, I think, in our modern time, it's been, I would say, one of the things in counseling that I've dealt with a lot is the struggle that individuals have with self-care. A lot of individuals feel that, well, maybe not, maybe a lot of people think about themselves too much, but at least in areas of people who are in the fields with regards to helping individuals, or they feel that that somehow they're fulfilled, which is a good thing when they help others, but they struggle with giving themselves time, giving themselves what they need. And this is sort of interesting what Hillel had said earlier. A person who's ohev shalom and rodev shalom, a person who loves peace and pursues peace. So what we said earlier, the person who loves peace, having peace within themselves and pursuing peace, again, caring and concern for others. And the fact is that we work with this together. Fascinating, one of the things I think people misinterpret, Sigmund Freud, when he used to talk about the concept of self and pursuing others and how we balance this, he used to talk about the id, the ego, and the self-ego. And the fact was the id was really the person who, like, the part of you that is concerned about your nature, about survival. And then the self-ego was the situation of that I'm concerned about the morality of the world, so I'm pursuing. And actually the ego was the one that would learn to balance that situation. So that's what I think Hillel is talking about over here. In ein ani li mili, well, that's if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? So I need to have my own self-care. Uchshani la'atzmi, but if I'm only for myself, ma'ani, then what actually I am. So I'm sure that Freud, in his teachings, probably saw this and was sort of developed that concept as well. So I want to speak a little bit more about this concept of how do we get to accomplish. So obviously, if I'm not going to work at something, so who's going to do it for me? So the Torah expects every individual to make the proper effort in one's life to grow spiritually. It doesn't come through where you were born or who you knew, or just sitting around and sort of expecting that the spirituality will sort of flow on you. I'm not going to deal with meditation right now, but the point is that the idea is, whatever the case is, it requires effort. So ein ani li mili. So I'm going to have to accomplish. Uchshani la'atzmi, but if I'm for myself, ma'ani. So even when I accomplish, so on one level, the fact is that don't always think, well, I've accomplished enough, and that I should sit back. Maybe there's something you can do more of. Maybe you have an opportunity. Maybe the fact is that you shouldn't sit on your laurels. So you have to make the effort. But if you say, well, that's it, then perhaps there are greater things that you can actually accomplish. So again, it can be something that can stimulate you thinking about as we'll talk more about accomplishing goals. But again, the idea is that, number one, you have a lot of effort within you. Again, we did speak about self-care, but you are the one who has the ability to do it. But if I'm only for myself, mani. So if I'm only either that perhaps you can accomplish more. But again, thinking about also, and just to add to this, is that one's goals, even if you have your personal goals, those goals that you accomplish for yourself, that thinking about purpose and meaning, you can actually use those talents to assist others. So the idea being is that if you're a great pianist, let's say, and you're playing wonderful work and it's beautiful for yourself, but the idea of giving it to others, like if Mozart decided that he would not share his music with others, then we'd all be lost. So the idea is that there can be specific effort for you, but again, if you look at it as an opportunity to give that to others, that is another way of dealing with this balance that Hillel is talking about. So let's look a little bit at the last phrase, "V'im lo achshav ein masai," if not now, then when? So on one level this is that if not now, when, is that tells you what we say in Judaism, is that you live in this world, and when you pass on, that's it. Meaning you have no opportunity. Whatever you've accomplished in this world, that's what you've accomplished, and God looks at that. But the fact is that this is the world that you have to live in. And the fact is that you won't have that opportunity when our soul and in the next world. Or, as the idea being, is that when a person is young, so a person is young, they might say, well, we have a lot of time. So my goals are, I'll get to it, or I'll get to those things, I'll get to self-development, I'll get to pursuing and doing things for others. I'll get to it. But the fact is that you maybe won't have that opportunity when you get older. But to those who are listening as well, that the fact is that there is still opportunity. Now is the time. In lo achshav ein masai, right? So if God has given us more years and an opportunity, we can accomplish things. We can make certain goals for ourselves. The goals might be different, right? It might be in a different place. We might not have the opportunities or the strengths, or we might not be. But again, we have opportunities to do other things, and we can accomplish different goals in lo achshav ein masai. If not now, then when actually will we have the opportunity? The opportunity is right now. Last point I'd like to give an approach is the idea is that here Hillel is telling how one is to accomplish a mitzvah, how to do one of the commandments. So one person can say, and this is more of a self-esteem issue, one could say, well, what does my mitzvah mean? Like, I'm not the greatest person, I'm not worthy, and you should tell such a person, if you're not going to be able to build yourself up and want to accomplish things, no one's going to do it for you. So again, on one level, it's telling you that you have a tremendous opportunity, that you are an individual who has a soul, and you can accomplish so much. You yourself are a world itself. Sometimes it's a little hard to see that when you see a lot of people wearing masks, but the fact is that we all have different appearances on our face. We're all different. We look different, and therefore it's sort of a reflection of our soul, and that we have unique talents with ourselves. So doing good deeds and accomplishing and sharing, that understanding in Eina Mili Mili. It is you that's the one that's able to do it. Now, the only thing is that one could perhaps say that if one is totally unique, then they're only going to do it for themselves. They're only going to care about their own glory. If that is the case, you're not going to accomplish greater good. Now, it's very possible you will accomplish greater good in certain areas. Reminds me of the great Herod, who wasn't so great, but he did accomplish to beautify the Beit HaMikdash, but he was a terrible person, murderous, etc. So the fact is that if it's only because of you that you're doing everything, you have to create within yourself an understanding of care for self, but understanding that the person next to you also care for them. Ohev es what we said earlier by Hillel, that you have to want to love those around you, and that will allow you. So you have to create a love of self, and an ability to say, I can accomplish. I am unique. I have an ability. I have something that I can offer. And at the same time, understanding your connection to humanity. And the fact is that caring for others, and that when one accomplishes, one is not only accomplishing for oneself, but is sort of doing for others. And that is true with mitzvos as well, doing acts of loving kindness, giving people, and as we had earlier with Hillel, bringing them closer to Torah. If you create a relationship with them, then you will be able to want to give of yourself to others. And the third thing is that the fact is that we wish everyone health and also wealth, right? But we wish everyone health, and I think in this time we sort of wonder, what will happen with our health, and I think in general we think about this throughout different stages in our lives, especially with a lot that's going on right now, and we think about what will be tomorrow. So again, here's not something to be sort of crazy about it, but to think about, if I want to accomplish something, that I should really think about, what can I do now? What can I do now? Or in a very short time period, what can I accomplish? How can my dealings of mitzvot, or my dealings with someone around me that I want to do for them now, that I'm thinking about, I'm thinking about that good friend that I haven't spoken to in a while, that hasn't heard from me. Let me call them. Let me see how they're doing. Or a cousin of mine that I haven't connected with. How can I use the time that I have right now? How can I use it to bring a love and peace to each other? So Hillel is basically telling us that we struggle with self-care and self for others, and so to be with both of that at the same time, and to think about, we're here for only a short period of time, at least mortally we're here for a short period of time. Let's take that opportunity and let's pursue goodness for our fellow human being.